Right. And we'll see how it gets on, won't we?
The internet was definitively split. Pro beard, really strange about me painting my toenails with the girls. They were very uncomfortable with that.
I thought that, I liked it. And if I had children, I would have gone to them, will you paint my nails? Just so I could be like you.
Well,
but
especially if you had daughters, you know, I straight up, I just think, you know, when you're getting, the whole family's getting a pedi, and then your daughter walks over and she's like, this is the color you're getting. You're like, all right, this is, I'm in. I mean, really, men, are you going to cut yourself out of like having your feet scrubbed and massaged with your, while you're sitting with your family? That's ridiculous.
Come on. Yeah. Right. What I'll do is I'll press record, and I'll do like a welcome to the Wellness Academy thing. If you're good for 45 to 60 minutes, is that okay with you? And then I'll do like a right, cheerio, thank you, leave a few seconds, and then say an actual goodbye, if that's all right with you.
Sounds good. Of course.
I'm joined today by, I get to say this, the legend that is Kelly Starrett. Thank you so much for taking the time out to do this. I can't be more appreciative.
Good to see you again.
I know. I've told the story about how you had no freaking choice but to get a greeting from me when you walked in to your gym back in October. Like, you know, drama going on at home, difficult time for you with the fires in and around California. And here's someone you've never met. You're 3 steps into your gym and he's like, Kelly Starrett, I can't believe I get to meet. Do you know what I mean? But you were very gracious and very kind and very welcoming, and you know, we had a fantastic time at your gym.
Well, you know, one of the extraordinary things that this strength and conditioning community, this fitness, wellness, performance movement community has done is it's created a tribe. It's created a network, and you know, we are desperate for those things in our society. And, you know, Juliet and I more and more feel along the lines that there's a real opportunity in the context of the training environment to solve a lot of the ails of being a kind of person finding themselves in 21st century life, where, you know, the dissolution of the traditional models of sports and teams and church. And suddenly now we can talk about food and movement quality and belonging and sleep, and all of those things have always been part and parcel of the sports experience. But now we're thinking, hey, this may be really the tonic for what ails so many of us. And frankly, you know, the internet has really driven this incredible connections and conversations where if you aren't a dick and you pay attention, you can learn a lot because people are being incredibly transparent right now.
Yeah.
And the access that you have into how they think is really profound.
I think it's the right kind of mindset, the right kind of people are embodying the phrase, the rising tide raises all ships nowadays, you know. I interviewed last night for this podcast, someone, it's so funny. So I came, for those people listening, we're going to get into who Kelly Starrett is if they've been living under a rock in the CrossFit world and beyond and they don't know who you are. But I had the absolute pleasure of training at your gym, which was the 14th ever CrossFit gym in the world. And there now are probably, if there aren't 14,000, there will be within like, God knows, like the next few years. And I came back, long story short, got into contact with yourself about coming on the podcast. We're now at the end of January 2020. Somebody in the UK beat me to it to interview you.
Damn it.
Chris Williamson, the Modern Wisdom podcast.
Yes.
I saw you come up on that and I was like, oh, damn. But I interviewed him last night and he was, you know, we could be classed as rivals, but he was still willing to come on and share wonderful things with me. And, you know, it's cool. It's really, really, really
I'll
cool.
tell you what, you bring up an interesting point right now because, you know, everyone is competing for eyeballs. And I think Juliet and I would certainly say that we have business competitors, you know, and to the extent that they are competitors is only because we may be sharing space or the, you know, fighting for the same set of eyeballs potentially, but you only become really a rival when you trip over and aren't respectful. I mean, one of the things that I really appreciate is that, you know, it's going to take different voices reacting to different people no one person is going to have the solution. I mean, I wear Reeboks, you wear Nikes, you know, I like chicken, you like beef. I mean, it's okay that we have our own individual appreciations, and we're going to have multiple voices and even styles and tools to end up solving that problem. You know, lately I've been saying, I'm like, look, your training is my diagnostic tool. So what is it you like to do? Then we can begin to help you understand using the training that you're doing. And to that extent and that end, we all need to realize, like, what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is not to cut each other out. And when you see someone attack someone else on the internet, or even attack their thinking, it really shows you that they've got gigantic holes in their process, because they are so insecure that the only way they can get attention is through negative sort of reaction. And, you know, something happened recently where, you know, we're trying to make the case that, you know, for our athletes and for the people who we're trying to support, that, you know, pelvic health, you know, pelvic floor health dysfunction is a big deal. And there was someone, and this, I think a lot of people do this innocuously, but someone on the internet's like tagged their favorite pelvic therapist friend and was like, you know, Jen, like, what do you think? And what you do as soon as you do that is you're setting Jen up against me. Like, if Jen has a different style or different approach, and by the way, this is my stinking channel. So if you want to do your own thing on your own channel, knock yourself out. But this person, and I almost wrote, is like, hey, don't put Jen against us. Jen and I are on the same team. We have different ways of solving this. We have different tools, but we're both trying to get to the bottom of this, right? And it's like, you know, my dentist is better than your dentist. My dentist uses hard style. Like, that's ridiculous. So, and this therapist said, hey, you know, I appreciate where you're coming from. She said this to her friend, but, like, you know, we don't comment on other pros' sites. And I was like, wow, that is so refreshing. Yeah. And that's really been our model, is that, like, I really watch and try to understand what you're doing. I'll never comment negatively. I'll comment positively, like, this is awesome. But to the extent that we are somehow adversarial because I can hide behind a keyboard is ridiculous. Go into the world, try to understand the thinking that people are doing. What problem are they trying to solve? And you might pick up a ton of information and a nuance of your thinking. And then suddenly this becomes an open source, not some adversarial, you know, spitting match, which doesn't advance the ball at all. And that, you know, maybe we're moving past post-troll society. I feel like there's been, Juliet's laughing in the background, but
hey,
it's so easy. It's so easy to be, you know, crazy on the internet because it doesn't cost you anything. And, you know, now we have a hair trigger. I mean, if you are a dickhead in the comments, you're gone. Because you can disagree, or you can say, hey, have you thought about this? Or this is not how I solve that problem. But the second you are adversarial or unkind, you're gone. And I'm sorry, but that, if you get your voice silenced, it's because your approach wasn't professional. Your approach was juvenile, and you don't deserve a table at the big boys, the big girls table. And there's so many good people working their asses off and trying to improve the world that it's really a profound time.
You've always done an amazing job. I think I've been following your stuff for such a long time. You know, I remember when you did Supple Leopard, finding it a bit too much for me at the time, you know, like, it was a real textbook. And then Ready to Run came out, and I was like, holy shit, like, here's a way to take what he did for a dummy like me and just make it really easy. And I used so many of the tips and tricks and tactics in there, and still my mind uses some of what you advised in that book as a baseline. You know, if I'm trying to do squat position and someone's saying to me it's okay to turn your feet out, my brain goes, are you sure? Like, are you sure that's okay? But yeah, we could go all over the place for hours and hours and hours, but I did want to try and do my best to have some structure to the chat. When people say to me, like, I'd say, like, have you guys heard of Kelly Starrett? And they say no. And I always find it really difficult to explain why you're so freaking cool. Like, but aside of that, explain what it is that you do. So I'm conscious this is maybe like one of those kind of annoying questions, but you're at a party, someone says to you, hey, Kelly, what do you do? How do you answer that question now?
We try to help individuals, teams, and organizations improve their well-being and physical performance. So we believe that people should be able to take a crack at making themselves feel better, get out of pain, improve their movement solutions, really democratize and remove behind the paywall the fact that you have a right to take a crack at fixing yourself. We really tried to push this narrative that if your knee hurts, you're not injured, your knee hurts. And now let's go ahead and give you some tools to see if you can improve that before you go, push the fire alarm. We're trying to help people become better allies. So when they talk to their physician, when they talk to their physio, they're more informed, and the physio doesn't start at such a low level. Well, this is your leg, your leg is connected to your knee. Your leg doesn't move very much. Maybe that's where your knee hurts. So, and then secondarily, we spend a lot of time trying to help organizations and high-level sports and performance achieve better sports and performance. We don't make the best athletes in the world and get to work with them. We make the best athletes in the world better. And what we've tried to do is say, here are the lessons we're learning in high-performance sports. Here's what we've learned in 15 years of owning a gym. And then let's take these lessons and actually have them matter. Instead of sport just being about circus, let's say that this is the greatest testing lab on the planet. What do we know about best practices for the average human? And right now, I think if you had pinned me down, 2 decades ago and asked me, hey, excuse me, and had asked me to explain my life's dream, it was not about public health. It was not about social justice. It was about, helping the world champions become world or championers, right? Like, how do we do that? How do we lift more? How do we, and now I really have come to believe that, we are in the middle of a really interesting health crisis where we're seeing sort of what we call, Jill and I are calling the uninhabitable body, where there's a real mismatch between environment and organism right now. And if you don't believe me, look at the statistics on girls that tearing their ACLs or low back pain or insulin sensitivity or diabetes rates in kids, or you can choose something. So if you think climate change is a problem, just wait until you see this organism generation that's grown up not moving as much, having access to really capped calories, having their sleep highly disrupted for months and months and months, and then throw inactivity on that and real stress. And that's not even talking about food insecurity or racism or, any of the other pressures that are real, that are stresses to the organism. What we have is a really non-durable, not very resilient organism. So when we match that with the fact that we're probably moving towards a more immortal kind of medicine where we're all going to be a lot older and we're going to have the ability to keep ourselves alive longer, we have a real durability problem, whether that's organ durability or, cognitive durability, because, the diabetes type 3, which is what we, think is, some of these onset dementia kind of related issues. We are not cruising and setting ourselves up to play this very long game. And once again, I'll tell you, if you ascribe to this model that's very popular called this biopsychosocial model, where we look, you're not just tendons and ligaments, how you eat and how you sleep and how much you are loved and do you feel safe and are you in a community? That's just as important as how well you move. That's just as important as do you walk enough during the day. It's just as important as do you get any sunshine on your body. So, there's actually a term for human health, the complex of human health, and it's called a hyper object. And climate change is a hyper object. The internet's a hyper object. It's an object or a thing that is so vast and complicated that it's difficult to know what's what. And it's difficult to conceive all the inputs and outputs. It's sort of an emergent phenomenon. And what I'll tell you is that what we know is, hey, we can look back and say, these are the foundations of being a human. And how do we know this particularly? Because when we do these things, we see upticks in the performance of human beings, in the durability of human beings, in the capacity of human beings. And, as a mom, or dad, just trying to get by and not be so fat and not have my knees hurt, I can still use those things, and there's the same set of tools that I can scale up to the All Blacks, to, you know, a team that you care about, you know. So, you know, that's really what we're trying to do, and then put that together in a narrative so that by the time children become adults, this is all known. It's not one thing we now have to go back and relearn, but we're having to teach everyone how to eat and how to sleep and how to feel tired, and, you know, and you know, people are trying to solve the sets of problems however they can, because we have disenfranchised them. We have not given them the tools to make better choices, you know, whether that's how to sleep or how to get off the depressant stimulant cycling of 6 cups of coffee, 12 glasses of wine. I mean, you know, people are just trying to make themselves feel better, have less pain, still be functional, but we are not playing like a long game. So that's what we try to do in a nutshell. And we try to simplify those behaviors. And, you know, there are enough smart people listening that we're going to improve for those people who can listen. We might lose a generation. We might not catch everyone, but we're going to catch as many people as we can.
You mentioned there then that there are certain things that if we do them, we see upticks as humans. You know, the we are cruising and we are set up to play the long game. What are some of those things?
How about moving more during the day? You know, so one of our friends is this great sort of human movement theorist named Katie Bowman, and she put out in one of her wonderful books this analogy of when you put an orca in captivity, its fin begins to fold, it begins to flop down, right? And people didn't know what this was about. And at a cellular level, this is called mechanotransduction, which means if I want my body and tissues to act like they're supposed to, they actually need physical load. So if you want a strong tendon, you better load the tendon. So if you have a tendinopathy or a tendinitis resulting from some dysfunction around the tendon, the way to heal that tendon is to actually treat it like a tendon, right? Bone density is a big issue, you know, and how do you get strong bones? You have to load them. So if you're a teenage girl and you don't load your bones, then that's going to be a problem for your ACL and your bone density when you become an older woman, right? So when you put an orca in captivity, you change the entire environment of the orca. So it spends more time at the surface, it doesn't dive, it doesn't hunt, it doesn't fight, which means you don't load the orca fin the way it's normally supposed to be loaded. And what ends up happening is you see downregulation in an expression of the collagen matrix that holds the fin up. That is the analogy for us as human beings. We are designed to be ridden hard and put away wet. We have to be loaded. We have to be uncomfortable. That is requisite for our expression of the DNA. So if you don't want to be suffer, because, you know, and suffering might mean to you walking up a steep hill or a set of stairs, right? It might mean jump roping. It can be really simple. You know, you can put a heavy backpack on and go for a walk and load your spine. So there's a lot of ways in. Going to yoga class and figuring out how to breathe, you know, eating the way we've been eating for 1,000,000 years, which means we eat vegetables and fruits. We eat a diverse protein sets, right? We don't just eat whey protein, which is a cast off side effect of, you know, cheese and milk processing. Like that's not what humans eat. We ate milk, we ate cheese, we ate skin and organ meats, and you know, we ate the whole thing. And so, you know, people, like, one of the things we try to tell people based on the experience we've had with the experts in the field is you need to eat a rainbow of vegetables and fruits, right? And that means, like, Juliet and I typically try to shoot for 8 kinds of vegetables and fruits in a day, 8 different kinds. And if you are a ninja, you should eat 40 to 60 in a year. But most of us are eating 3 or 4, maybe a little limp tomato, maybe a little iceberg lettuce, maybe eat some broccoli. So, you know, you think you're killing it because you have broccoli, brown rice, and a sashimi chicken breast. Meanwhile, there's no connective tissue, there's not a lot of diversity, and there's just not a lot of micronutrient density in that meal. Like, we used to give the chicken meat to the dogs as we ate the brains and the organs and cracked the bone, and we need all of that. So, you know, what we're seeing is fundamentally this sort of disconnect between some of the conditions in which we thrived and flourished. And don't get me wrong, I like dentistry, I like antibiotics, right? I don't like getting sick from spoiled milk. There's a whole bunch of things we can sidestep. Vaccinations are amazing. You know, I don't know if you saw someone with polio lately. It's not cool. And, you know, I think when we start to come back and say, well, what does it mean? Well, I need to be in a tribe. I have to be in a community. And if I put up walls and I don't go to church and I don't have a community practice and I'm on a team, you know, there is no such thing as a human lone wolf. That does not exist. Those people are sociopaths in the woods. The rest, you know, they're the old, you know, Cape Buffalo who like is so gnarly that he's rejected by the community. It's not his choice. So when we come back to those basics, when we come back to the foundations, then there's a lot of option and choice in there. There's a lot of diversity. Well, how do you like to move? I like to deadlift and press. Great. Fantastic. Can you still move your ankles all the way? So if you did yoga and soul cycle and went to church, that's a pretty good little practice in there, right? You may be missing a few things, but you're breathing hard, you're touching some shapes. Maybe you need to spend some time jump roping and you're almost there. So, you know, swing kettlebell, do a little deadlifting, 100%, run up a hill once in a while. So, you know, what's happened though, is we've made it so complex that none of us, you know, this is all Juliet and I think about and talk about. And sometimes we're like, dude, what? This is crazy. People are crazy. I can't tell what pill I'm supposed to take and when I'm supposed to eat I'm not supposed to eat. Just the other day, we were listening to Trevor Noah, and he's like, the greatest flip-flop of all time was bread. You know, he was making a point about something else. And he's like, bread is how humans existed and survived, and it's how we process wheat. It's a fermented food. And then we're like, bread is the devil. You know, you're like, dude, which one is it? Choose. So let's get back to basics. And then, you know, let's trust that people are smart enough to work it out for themselves. And we really do believe that if you give people better information, they'll make better decisions.
So I remember first kind of getting into paying attention to your work. And one of the things I loved about it was you literally used to stand in what I've had. So I think I mentioned to you when I saw you in person, one of my favorite little inspirations for a home gym is watching the video that you did for Rust and Iron on Tim Ferriss's YouTube channel. And looking at your home gym, it just inspires me for what I would like. I just envision, you know, the pool, the slack line, the fitness equipment. I've got the same steel mace from On It that you've got that I never use, but like looks pretty in the hallway and all of the kit, right? And then you used to just record videos, just talk it. The first one I think was a 10-minute squat test, right? You know, and I watched you skateboard down your street on a video, and we joked about how many times I've heard your daughters in the background talking to you, and I knew their voices before I even met them because I've done so many Mobility WOD videos and blah blah blah. But you know what, that was new at the time. I really new. It spawned a lot of people doing something similar in one form or another. What inspired you just to sit there and talk into a screen before it was a thing and do Mobility WOD, aka the Ready?
How about this? It wasn't even a screen. The iPhone did not have a video camera.
Oh God, yeah.
So, you know, I don't think Juliet and I owned iPhones when we started this thing. You know, we had like some kind of flip phone thing, and you know, YouTube was a nascent, emergent thing. It wasn't sure.
Taking you forever to upload a video back then.
Yes, it took forever. And I remember actually on this like second or third day, I got into big trouble because Juliet's like, look, it's taking you 45 minutes, you know, futzing about with this. And this is never going to be sustainable. She's like, you either need to stop this or you need to work out how to be more efficient. I was like, noted. You know, she's like, we have 2 children and a life and you can't disappear for 45 minutes futzing around with the internet. So, you know, what we realized is a long time ago, I'd come home and I would tell Juliet, man, I'd see the same like 10 problems, you know, they're all just variations of the same thing. And, you know, don't control my back when I move, something hurts. Don't have complete shoulder range of motion, something hurts, right? You know, can't extend my hip, something hurts. And, or I'm losing, or I can't generate power, or can't receive my heavy clean and go to the Olympics. I mean, scale up, scale down. And, you know, sometimes, you know, this guy flew in from Japan to see me once, and he was like, man, my shoulders are just the problem in my overhead squat. I was like, great. You know, what's important to you? You know, he's like, I want overhead squat. So I watch him overhead squat, and he actually folds forward at 90 degrees, basically at the hip. So he's looking around his arms, and his arms are like way behind his head. I'm like, I'm not sure it's your shoulders, sir. I think it's the fact that you actually can't bend your ankles at all. And so when he squat, he would run into this ankle wall. Okay. And then the only way he could solve this problem was to hinge forward. So, I was like, Juliet, this guy didn't even know that he had an ankle range of motion problem, that people, their hips weren't moving at all. So we just set out to say, hey, let's raise the bar for our own athletes and community, and let's solve this problem for our own community. So if we made a video a day for a year, just about what we knew and how it was doing, then we could at least refer back to people, hey, I need you to do video 44, or I need you to do video 26. So it was a tool for me. And then it really begat other conversations. And we wondered if we would run out of things to talk about. And it turns out here we are literally a decade later. We're 10 years into the project this September, and we're still refining, understanding, we're getting better. We've been making video content about how to take care of your body and how to move more effectively and all the other things for 10 years now. And, I'm so glad that so many other people got on board, because, we need other takes. There's so many clever ways to train right now and to get the best practices out. So, the challenge of the coach currently is to figure out what is essential. I was just having a conversation yesterday with a really talented coach who also is a Fighting Monkey coach. And Fighting Monkey is a movement tradition that's come out of dance and martial arts. It's incredible and beautiful. And he's 30, and he's like, I'm really struggling to figure out what's essential. And it's like, that's the greatest conversation we should be having. What is essential? And then if you can speak all the languages, then you can add seasoning, or you can spin up or spin down, or grab, but I said to him, like, what is it that you need all your people to be able to do? Let's train for that. And as many different fun ways and community ways, it gives a sense of self and camaraderie that we can't. One of the things that we think, per the gym that you talk about, our home gym, is that, Juliet and I are average people. We have 2 daughters, one of them's in high school, one of them's in middle school. Juliet is scarfing down a lunch, and she's going to go run out and pick up our daughter from high school. And then she's going to take her to a sport. And, we have 2 businesses. We have about 40 employees, and there's a lot to do. And that means we sometimes have to train at home. That's the only time we can do it. So, a long time ago, what we try to have always believed in is this notion of test and retest and share. This has worked for us. Does it still work for us? Does it work for someone else? Great. Is it still working? Let's share it and see what other people think. And, the worst expression is the 10, 10, 10, 10 at 10, which when I would come home at 10 p.m. from the gym, and I would work out for 10 minutes at 10 p.m. And I would do like 10 burpees and 10 pull-ups and 10 swings for 10 minutes at 10 p.m. And that's all I had. And Julia would be like, great job, hon. You moved your body. And then I would flop down and black out. So, keep in mind that we don't, sometimes we present people with, this is the golden way and the complete plan, and don't deviate from the path. Otherwise the whole thing falls apart. But humans are much more resilient. And what we really have to remember is that any input today is positive input. One of our good friends, Jimmy Chin, who was the director of that movie Free Solo that won the Academy Award, where Alex Honnold free climbed. One of Jimmy's older movies is called Meru, and he and Conrad Anker, another guy, try to ascend this really crazy tall peak in Pakistan, and they get about 100 meters from the top. And this is after 4 days in a tent and another 4 days of climbing, and they're out of food. They realize they're going to go down. And after the movie, I said, Jimmy's a friend of ours. And I said, hey, Jimmy, you were out of food. What did you do on the way down? He's like, well, for 4 days, we each had a third of a Cliff Bar. And I was like, what? You ate a third of a Cliff Bar a day for 4 days? He's like, yep. And I said, but your food was at the bottom. He's like, well, funny thing, our food was buried by an avalanche, so we couldn't actually find it. So we got to the bottom and then had another 18-hour walk out. And what I thought to myself was, I'm probably a little precious about my food, And on that day, Juliet and I stopped being as precious. Get some input today, call it a practice, do a little bit more tomorrow. I'll see you in a year. And I guarantee you that's enough. It's not enough to set a world record to be an Olympian, but your life looks very different. And I think we've confused that. I think we now have access to the best programming training plans on the universe. And we're like, well, that's what I got to do. And that is not what you got to do. You need to sleep more, figure out how to relax when you get home, and maybe swing a kettlebell in your kitchen.
Yeah, it's easy to sit and fill your Instagram feed with people to be inspired by, and then feel like if you aren't doing what they're doing, that it's not good enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, I hold my hand up.
I think that's, I think we all feel that way sometimes. And especially when some of us have old histories of being athletes before, and we knew how much more free time we had, and all of a sudden you don't have that free time. But, the real question is, I think, as we get existentially is, especially around the gym, is what was the point of the gym? The gym was to train for something, right? So the gym was not this recursive beast where I do more pull-ups, so I do more pull-ups, right? The goal was to train for something. And I think what we've lost is that something. Yeah. When's the last time you played a pickup game of futsal or soccer? Or
I can't even tell you the last time I even thought I was training for something. That's quite the epiphany.
So it's easy, and everyone has been following, there's a great strength track coach named Bondarchuk, very famous coach. And he was one of the first people I'm aware of. He was like, whoa, you're strong enough. Let's go throw. Like the limiting factor to your shot put is not, can you bench anymore? And athletes like to go to the gym. We can measure progress. We can see that we're getting stronger. It feels good. We have this community. We don't have anything to risk. It's the only safe place. But the goal was to train for something. And
you had I did know I had this because I was going to mention it. You did a few videos a while ago, one of which was did you do a Tough Mudder, and you also deadlifted at a powerlifting meet, and you something tourist. What was your phrase that you coined for quite a while?
Oh, super tourist.
That was the one. That I liked that a lot.
Well, the idea is, sometimes Juliet and I, my wife is this, it's been just over a year before she went back and won a world championship as a master. We like to bike. We like to paddle. We like to explore and hike and take river trips. And the idea of trying to be ready for that, now we have really shifted and are saying, sort of, what is the minimum dose so that we can blast out on our bikes and destroy a long ride and come back and still be not savaged by that ride, right? And that is really focused on, hey, we don't want to, I would think that if you pin my wife down and said, what are you training for? She's like, well, 40s and 50s, it's about being 60 and 70. Yeah, man. Like, we're putting money in the bank. Every workout we do, we see as money in the bank. And otherwise, what's it going to be? Like, am I going to lose my sense of self when all of a sudden my deadlift goes down 20 kilos? Like, it can't ever be about that, right? It needs to be about what's essential. And I think some of that language is in there. It's a movement practice, which means that I just keep practicing and I keep practicing and I find out what I like and what's essential for me. And, and it doesn't have to be a perfect practice. It has to be, varied. It has to expose my tissues to full range of motion. And then I can get the rest of it by, squatting in front of my TV at night and, not sitting during the day and open up my hips once in a while. And I just feel like, as I've gotten older, I'm turning 47 this year, the goal is I've become a lot more reasonable and unreasonable. I like to pick up heavy things. I like to, you and I are on the bike. I like to crush you. What's your wattage? I'm going to do more. I mean, I still like to compete. It doesn't mean I can't train intensely, but I'd say that my system and thinking has become much more reasonable. And it's almost like I've gone back to Pavel, 101, which is like the two lifts I never, ever miss in a week are overhead press and deadlift. Those are my two go-tos. Everything else, I just hang on that. The more I press, and the more I deadlift, it seems to me those are the two movements that anchor everything else. Do I think you need to deadlift 1,000,000 pounds? Nope. But when I deadlift, my back feels good. My hips feel good. I feel strong. I can drop it in without lots of crazy warm up. Do I think you should power clean and power snatch and muscle snatch and do all these other things too? Of course, but probably in a week, you'll see me do a ton of pull-ups, a ton of pressing, and a ton ton of deadlifting. Those are the game changers. And then maybe some kettlebells, and then I breathe hard on the bike again. But those lifting movements are the core. And maybe I have the right because I can maintain my range of motion and I take care of my body. But we've got to help people be more simple so that they can get to it and actually get some work done. And one of the things that's confused us a little bit is we're suddenly now thrown into an exercise class where I do 1,700 high intensity exercises, and I'm fitnessing. It's really hard. And is that fitnessing? Am I making progress? Am I blown out so that I don't want to go run later? Am I creating a pattern or a positional learning problem? I just think sometimes it's crazy. Like, if you need to go do that, you need to go jump into a Zumba class. You need to go follow my friend, the fitness marshal, online and do some dancing. There's so much fun stuff to do as your body. It doesn't have to be elliptical and bicep curl. Shouldn't be elliptical and bicep curl.
So you started out. Which came first? Was it kayak or canoe? You did.
Both. I started kayaking first and then switched to canoe.
And of that side of your life and the physiotherapy background, which one came first?
Oh, the kayaking. I've been kayaking since I was 12. Yeah,
so
for sure.
You competed high level in the kayak and the canoe.
Tried.
You became a physiotherapist. Mobility WOD, one of the first 15 CrossFit gyms on earth. We haven't touched on the big hitters that you've helped, but we could just mention one. Who won the MLB last year? They won it.
Oh, the Nationals.
And you helped them to the title.
I work with their coaches to make their job easier. Yes.
Yeah. So that's one of many, right? Your list is long in terms of who you've worked with.
Well, it's at some point you need to put up or shut up. You need to show me your work. There's a lot of people shouting at the internet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, where are you? Let me see. Who's using your stuff?
On top of that, the best coached class I've ever been to was the Metcon I came to on the Tuesday at your gym. You coached for the full 60 minutes, non-stop involvement. It was amazing. And not nitpicking at every little thing we were doing, making us feel like shit. Like, the energy was incredible. It was a brilliant place to be. Like,
hang on, let me say this. So, people forget that I do. I would describe myself as a coach first and foremost. That's what I do. Why did I got into mobilization? I really resisted becoming the mobility guy. I resisted, but the reason we did that is that people were in pain and they couldn't deal with their pain. They didn't know how to deal with their pain. That's something a coach has to deal with. And two, if you can't put your arms over your head, it's going to really make snatching difficult later. So what's your plan? More snatching? I saw people were like, you just need to squat more. I'm like, that shit doesn't work. More squats do not necessarily beget better squats, right? So there's a problem there. So that's why we got in there. And then let me just be super transparent, because when you came to my class, which is just an open, I call it a skilled conditioning class, it's not for you, it's for me. As a coach, I make a hypothesis, a skill, or something I want to do, and then I test you guys on it. I test my thinking on it. So the whole time I'm engaged, because you're there for me as a coach, not the other way around. And in that service, you need to feel seen. You need to have a dose of unconditional positive regard. There's a lot of things I need to try to get done in that magical hour. Get you warmed up, improve, restore, touch ranges of motion, realize what skills I'm going to develop or reinforce for the day, right? Get some work done, wrap it up, high five, so everyone feels good. So I want you to come back.
Backhand high five.
Well, it's more organized and more sanitary. So your choice. And, but the bottom line is, I think one of the reasons I can still be so stoked on this thing is that I'm still working it out. I'm still refining my technique and my cues and my exercise selection, and it's always open. I get better and smarter, and I go through phases where I become obsessed with something because I'm a little obsessive sometimes. And then, and I think that's what's great about having an active coaching practice. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people on the internet who do not run a gym. And I don't say you have to run a gym to be legit, but man, show me your thinking scales. How do you manage this set of problems? And 15 years, imagine the variety of persons come through our door, from world champions to WWE world champions or world record holder in as many different sports as you can. And then moms and dads and broken people. And we have an adaptive athletes class, and we have people in their 70s and 80s working out with us. And where is your through line thinking? So
random English guys that come in telling you've got a bad back in your first part of your class. Do you know what I mean?
That's all part of it. So, one of the things that I see is that if you take your finger off that, unplug yourself from the actual practice, then you're not actually still learning and practicing and refining. And you don't have to, Mike Boyle, Dan John, the master coaches in my life who I respect and admire, they don't have to coach a ton, but I guarantee they still coach. They still teach and coach, because even if it's their own coaching group, Mike Bergner still coaches, he calls it the geezers. He's got this little group of men, he's been coaching he's one of my oldest senseis, he's probably in his 70s and stronger than I am. I think he just did 400 pull-ups for his birthday, or 1,000 pull-ups for his birthday, something ridiculous. And, my point is, everyone that I respect and admire is still coaching, still involved. It may be less, but it's not just enough to talk about on the internet, and you've got to actually have a practice.
Where I was going with it, right? It wasn't just a blow smoke up Kelly's arse 30 seconds. Do you know what I mean? It was, you seem to be so, like, you're brilliant at talking to camera as well. And it's like, so I'm curious as to how or what you've done to have many strings to your bow. So, like, one of my favorite ever podcasts still to this day is, I think, episode 3 of the Tim Ferriss Show. You, Tim, Justin Major sit down, and it's an hour and a half or 2 hours of interesting conversation, actionable takeaways, and fun listening to you guys get drunk on red wine, I think, like on episode 3. And then you do 2 others, he comes to you and talks about CrossFit. There's another one, and they still stand out after he's done over 400 episodes, because you're fun to hear and fun to listen to. Like, yes, a lot of that is personality driven, but I'm inspired to try and be not just good at one thing, but because public speaking is an upgrade to every area of your life, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I'm just curious as to if there's anything you can put that down to.
Well, let me say I appreciate that, and I really do some. I'm not so meta about it like Brett Bartholomew kind of person, but I watch people communicate, and I watch how people talk, and let me just come back to the fact that when you are a coach, you are giving an hour of spontaneous discussion and feedback in real time. The communication is a big deal. I've had formal communication theory in physical therapy school, but I also am the son of a professor and grew up watching my mom teach. And, I started teaching kayaking when I was 14, but I was the senior patrol leader in my Boy Scout troop at age 12 and had to teach the young scouts how to do stuff. So, there is no substitution for lots and lots and lots of reps. And I will not go back and watch those early 10 years ago videos, because they're awful, and I stutter and I'm too slow and I'm not connected, and with just a lot more practice. And what I know my wife would commiserate on is that I am much better with practice. If you give me some training and practice, I can take the trash out, I can fold the laundry in time, I can, and there's no substitution for continuing to practice. What's amazing is that I think I just started deadlifting a couple of years ago, right before that powerlifting meet with Mark Bell that you referenced.
Yeah, I
understood deadlifting for the first time. That was the first time I ever deadlifted. I've been deadlifting since I was 14. That was the first time I was like, oh, that's what they mean. Like, that was when I figured it out. It only took me like 30 years to figure that out. So, I'll get it eventually, So, some of this is, I watch comedians communicate. I watch the best teachers talk. The whole thing is the game. And, I'm generally curious and generally stoked. And I think those two things go a long way. I'm enthusiastic about understanding and learning and playing. And so are all my best friends. They're all like that. They're all stoked and fun to be around. And, one of the things that's nice is that as we've gotten older, we've all been able to shuck our ego a little bit and, and be more vulnerable and expose ourselves to failure. I'll tell you, this has been something that's been really profound for me. And I think anyone can relate to this, but I'm the worst person in the room always. You still there?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I am always the worst in the room. I am the slowest. I'm the weakest. I'm the fattest. I'm the biggest. I'm too strong. My lungs aren't big enough. I'm not flexible enough. I'm not quick enough. I'm not smart enough. That is my game. I am always playing catch up with everyone all the time because I have such savage friends and such,
Right.
let me tell you a story about, like, you think you're a good lifter, then you go out to West Side Barbell. You're lifting with Louis Simmons, the grandfather of powerlifting, West Side method, right? He's a legend. And he's watching us lift, and I get a chance, and I warm up, and I have my all-time best back squat ever. I back squat 525, and I have 100 pounds of band on the tension. So imagine whatever that is, right? And I am so thrilled that I have just squatted that much in front of Louis Simmons. He's watching. I'm watching all the other men squat. Then, because I'm with the women, I'm squatting all the women. Laura Phelps gets in and doubles and triples what I did, and then works her way up to another 200 pounds on the bar. And I was the weakest woman on the platform. And I couldn't even get to the men's platform because they were an order of magnitude stronger. So here I am. I'm a good athlete. I'm not even a good powerlifter. I'm the weakest woman powerlifter on this platform this day. And I don't know what you could do. You take out that and you're like, well, this is not my sport. You know what I mean? So welcome to eating humble pie all the stinking time. And it's extraordinary because what it's done is it's really let me enjoy process and not worry about being the worst, because I'm always the worst. And I'm the worst speaker, and I'm the worst teacher. And when I come in, I really try to pay attention. And so if you're enthusiastic and you pay attention, there's a recipe for lifelong experience. And and I think sometimes Juliet and I, when we're around some of our really talented, bright friends, the common denominator is that they are listening and interested, and they're interested in the world, and they think that there's a better way. And growth mindset is kind of a pinche throwaway language, but the idea is, man, we've got to be, this is a practice and we'll never arrive. This is the infinite game we're going to continue to play. So, it's been fun because I feel like I've just now come through my apprenticeship. That's legitimately, I'm just beginning, and I now know enough to be dangerous because I'm an intermediate. That's how I feel. Like I have the last 15 years plus all my experiences gotten me to the place now where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm beginning to understand and appreciate nuance and relationships and I'm just like, welcome to the new, I'm just here for the first time. Like for the first time, I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to say something.
Look out, world.
Hold on to your butts.
So I wanted to touch on, because side note, something that was, and this seems now, I'm thinking about it, completely off topic, but it is, I did have a plan. And this is next bit on my plan.
Well, I'm talking about things I don't get to talk about very often. So
this is cool. Which is cool. No apology necessary at all. We obviously met just before Halloween last year, 2019. And what was funny is, you won't be aware, believe it or not, I ended up outside your house on the 31st of October.
Oh, did you come by?
So my girlfriend's step brother, who we brought to the class that day, takes Caroline and I out and gives us an experience of what an American Halloween is like. And we're like, oh my God, how incredible is this, right? We walk past this house. The guy's got a DJ. This is probably going to ring a bell. This guy's got a disco ball attached to the telephone cables, where it was in the street, with the lights. Everyone's having this unbelievable time. We're walking down the street. He's talking to all his friends, seeing the level to which these American families have gone to decorate, to pimp out their front yards and everything, and it's unbelievable. We walk back down, we're having a good dance at this guy's house, outside this guy's house, and then one of the people he knows is like, yeah, this is Kelly Starrett's house. And I'm like, you are kidding me. And I actually said to Caroline, because we saw you, it was like 2 days previous, right? And I'm like to Caroline, we need to go and say hello. And she's like, we can't. It will look like you're stalking him. We are not going in his house. And I was like, fine. And it was just so funny to just have met you and then to come across yours, and you've been talking about your plans, and it's just so funny. And
we did just so everyone can imagine that we did Midsommar, right?
Yes.
The movie. That's why there was all the black lights and the maypole, and we were all dressed up like a Swedish murder cult.
And I wanted to say, part of what I wanted to touch on with that was, you've gone so far and above and beyond doing what could be considered the standard practice as a coach. Touch on what you did with the stand-up desks in and around your local area.
Well, I think, if we're true to what we're saying, then we're trying to take what we're learning and trying to solve these social problems, right? And one of the social problems that we found was that kids would start moving enough. On a rainy day, kids are getting 2,000 steps a day, sometimes 3,000 steps. And you don't believe me, your phone has a motion detector. You can see how many steps you took in a day. So you don't need a fancy motion tracker, because there's not a person who doesn't walk around without their phone all the time. And, we were doing talks and helping large organizations get to the bottom of some of their public health issues. A workforce that's, it doesn't just have absenteeism, but has presenteeism. People aren't there, they're not very engaged. And so we realized that we have these real mismatch between environment and growing bodies. What does the person need? They need input. How much input are they getting in a chair, right? So don't make this about forward head on neck and rounded back and hunchback and text. It's just, is this the environment in which you want a developing organism to spend 6 to 8 hours a day, right? On top of the car, in front of the telly, right? So it aggregates, and what you're seeing is that you're not putting enough enrichment in the environment, right? I mean, if you locked your dog in a chair all day, you're going to come home and your dog's going to have torn apart the chair, right? So we went to our principal and said, hey, what do you think about trying to create a more movement-rich environment by having a standing desk that allows the kid to fidget, individually hide it for them, so they're not all sitting in the same size chair at the same low desk, and then they can sit on the ground, they can perch in a stool. We're just going to change how the environment works. And we thought we would have to sell it to our principal, and she was like, this sounds great. When can we start? So we flipped one classroom, we flipped 4 classrooms, then the next year we flipped the entire school. So we have 450 kids standing. And this is our 8th year. That I think 8th year, 7th year. Let's see, 7th kindergarten, 7th year that school has not had a sitting traditional desk. And fast forward, we got about 90,000 kids around the country standing at schools, maybe more. We're trying to we are funding our first research project with University of California, Berkeley, looking at changing the environment as an enrichment tool to see if it can help with obesity rates, see if it can help with, focus and attention in really Title I schools where kids don't have the after school activities, aren't moving. And, really it comes down to, are we moving or are we not moving? Are we humans or are we not humans? What is it we're supposed to do? And one of the things that we know is that if we want to avoid folded fin syndrome, we've got to load the organism. We recently interviewed on our little podcast a physician named Dr. Nick DeNubili, who is a very, very well-known orthopedic surgeon. He said, one of the things that's really shocked him is he's been doing ACL injury on kids for a long time, ACL surgeries. But lately there's been a big change. And one of the changes is that he used to start the drill for the hole for the ACL by hand. And then he'd pull out the power tool, and sometimes he'd break off these bits and he'd just lean in his whole body and this big power. So the bones were so hard on his athletes, right? And now he starts the drill by hand, and then he continues to do the whole thing by hand because it's so soft. So in a generation, he's seen bones go from petrified wood. Sorry, Chips. all the way back to, you know, bones that are so soft that he doesn't need the drill to put them in. And so I think that's really telling about the environment and organism. And one of the problems with the human is that we're so tolerant that sometimes we can't spot the outcomes right away. And so we think to ourselves, this isn't a problem now, but maybe it'll be a problem in the future, you know? And because we haven't run the experiment for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years or 50 years, we don't really know what the outcome is. And so it's not authentic for us to say this isn't a problem. What we should really have to say is this is not a problem for us now, right? And what we're looking for is solutions that don't have to be administered to by another, you know, person. It doesn't have to, you don't have to coach it. If you create an environment, I mean, if you want people at the hospital, working around a lot of hospitals, and, you know, hospitals are full of really unhealthy workers, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I say is, look, if you don't want people to eat little chocolates, because you think that that's not a great behavior for people who are sleep deprived and stressed and working late hours, like, don't buy chocolates, buy fruit, just change it, right? You know what I mean? Like, if you know, I always tell my girls, if you don't want to be caught in an awkward situation in Vegas with, you know, exotic dancers and cocaine, step 1, don't buy cocaine. Step 2, don't be surrounded by exotic dancers. Step 3, don't go to Vegas, you know? And so removing the cookies from your house makes it harder to eat a cookie at 2 a.m. You know, Juliet brought a little bag of cookies home last night, and I was not going to go to bed till they were gone.
Yeah,
and I found that my mission.
Not in the house anymore.
They are distinctly absent. And so if there are no cookies in the house, I'll eat cookies. So if I can change the environment so that the walk meeting that we have is scheduled for a walking meeting, that's great. If I park my car further away, I have to walk to and from the car. And suddenly it's sort of a way of seeing the world a little bit, right? And I think that's what we want. We want first things first. So if we come back to that original idea as we're looking at improving the environment of the person as important as the exercise they do, well, then let's actually be real about improving the environment. And let's not just give it lip service. Let's not just say sleep more and eat better. Like that has not gotten us anywhere, has it?
No. So the last thing I was going to ask you, which is, and I know it's just his last question, but your answers are good answers. So it's not like this is going to take you 2 minutes to answer. You know, my podcast is called The Wellness Academy. And, you know, I think you could say Wellness Academy, you can say Ready State, you can say Modern Wisdom, you know, they're acronyms for the same principle, I'd like to think.
Absolutely.
And I was excited to make this kind of my last question. What is a life of wellness according to Kelly Starrett? You know, you talk about Juliet saying, why am I training at 40 and 50? Well, so I can train at 60 and 70. My brain is almost at that now. Like, why am I training at 30 and 40? Well, to develop the kind of ideas that mean that I can train at 50 and 60. You know, like that's where my brain goes. Because I've had so many niggles as a person for the last 15 years. You know, it's like, okay, I want to be able to stand up straight when I'm 50. You know, I want to be able to do 100 pull-ups on my birthday or more, like, you know, like Mike Bergner. You know, I want to be able to do that. With that mindset, what are my low-hanging fruit for the next 10 years of my life so that I can still do it for another 10, 20, 30, and 40 and 50 years?
You know, I think this is the real question. And I think, like so many good problems, let's go to the end and work backwards, right? What is it? I want to be useful. I don't want to be a burden to my family. I want to be able to play for a long time. You know, about 5 years ago, this is not known widely, maybe 5.5 years ago, I was skiing very fast. And I had just deadlifted 550 pounds. I was power cleaning 365. I was very, very strong, very fit. And I was going very fast. And I just booted out. Just slipped her, you know, head my hips on the snow, and just like you've seen every skier, racer do ever. And something happened and I caught some energy. The ski caught and put a lot of energy into my knee. And I ended up putting my femur through my tibia. And I have 2 gigantic holes in those 2 bones. And I completely mushed my meniscus on that side. So for the last 5.5 years, I've been working on maintaining my range of motion and being strong and limiting the things I do. Like I haven't been able to squat. I do these really weird squats, but I can deadlift. I can do heavy step ups. I can run. I can swing. I can sled drag. I can row. I can find ways to stay off that thing, right? I can't double under because it's like someone sticks a knife into my knee, right?
Okay.
I can't front squat because it feels unstable and bone on bone.
Oh.
So I can power clean to a high position or muscle clean. That works just fine. So I've had one of my first experiences, my right wrist is trashed. And I mean trashed. Why? Because I broke my hand, broke my wrist, dislocated my elbow, tore the cartilage in my wrist, right? And then, for whatever reason, I don't have much wrist extension. It doesn't hurt, but I can't do some things. And so I have witnessed firsthand what it's like to have to pull things off the table, like so many other people who've had orthopedic injuries and accidents and pathologies. And, what it's really done is focused on, hey, I'm going to have to be really good at things I can do. And just because I can't do 150 different movements, 120 probably is going to be enough to be elegant and still continue to play and ride my bike and do all the things I care about. I've learned to paddle my stand-up board, learn to paddle it goofy foot, not regular foot, because that is low my knee. So I just learned a new skill. I tried to skateboard goofy. There's just a whole bunch of things I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to become better at this. And that has definitely sharpened my mind. Like, poor me, I injured myself skiing, right? But it sharpened my mind about really playing this durable long game. And so if you ask me, what's the goal is to continue to practice in the best that's available to me in ways that are, I think, dynamic and shifting. I think if you get really into paddling, go paddle and then pull back on something else. If you're really into biking, go have a season and ride your bike all the time and then pull back and do something else. And, if you get into powerlifting, go find out how strong you get and what a crappy slow athlete that makes you. That's fine with me, and, you get into Olympic lifting and you hurt all the time, or you realize that, man, your cardio sucks. Well, go work on that for a while. So I think it's okay to have hobbies and to get excited about things and go deep dive into yoga, go join a dance club, go see what's up and how amazing your body is. And then come back to what's essential to keep me doing these things, right? And what's essential is I got to walk more. I do not mess around with my sleep. And then something that's really been profound for Juliet and I is we have a sauna. And we're fortunate enough that we have a sauna in our backyard. And we get hot almost every day. And that has really helped us fall asleep faster, get out of our stressed states that we're in sometimes. Helps me manage, heat stress better when I'm an athlete. There's just a whole bunch of things that, the research is that it's maybe hugely brain protective. So there's.
What sauna did you buy? Did you buy a barrel or?
I have a barrel sauna. Yeah, and it gets really, really hot. It gets like 100 degrees C in there. Do you mind
me asking, like, ballpark how much that was?
I think it's somewhere between, like, they're soon like 3,000 and 5,000.
Yeah, this is what I heard. Yeah.
There's a new one now that is a small cabinet that has a traditional wet dry sauna that you can just plug into the wall. You don't need to be special, and it's small, so it looks like an infrared sauna. Yeah. But it actually has one. I don't know who makes it, but we've got to.
It's on my dream list. It's on my dream list.
I totally agree, and I think we've got to do a better job of making these things accessible. It's not an accident. The Russian Turkish baths are a thing. That the Romans had a public bath. That, like, people have been getting hot together for a long time. And maybe the sauna is just all bullshit, but Juliet and I end up in a dark place with some friends having a chat, and there's no technology in there, and it's dim in there, and everyone comes out relaxed. So, some of the things that we've tried to do is, because we feel like we could work 24 hours a day. We feel like we could take on all the considerable stress that's out there to be done. And sometimes we feel like we're playing for some big stakes. And we have created process and practice in our family that helps us hit the brakes, even though we have massive amounts of momentum, right? Can't hit the brakes. What doesn't work is drinking for me. Man, it messes up my sleep. I can see how it messes up my heart rate variability. It sure feels good sometimes to have a big glass of wine at the end of a long day. but holy shit, that really puts me in the hole the next day.
You
So
ignore it
that's
full
not
stop
a
now,
strategy that's very sustainable, right? No, I think alcohol is actually proof of God's love and humans' intelligence. But but I choose to drink when I'm on vacation. I choose to drink when it's appropriate, and I probably don't have more than one. And it's probably one drink every 2 weeks.
I've heard non-stop about the positive benefits of red wine, and I have developed an enjoyment of a small glass. But at the same time,
I don't think that's a limiting factor. I like I said, I think you'll figure out. I think that you figure out what works for you, what's your priority. But if you're already a stressed human, we should look at that as another stressor. So anyway, that's what's worked for us.
Yeah.
And it seems to be our friends. And then we suddenly are like, hey, I think we're going to be 100. And I think we're going to make it. And I think we're not going to, freak out and implode from stress and overwork. And, that's really the long-term game.
I asked somebody on a podcast the other day, and in a kind of joking way, but I think just the fact that you can ask this as a joke demonstrates that it won't be a joke for much longer. Maybe not strictly, but I said to him, will human beings get to a point where we can live forever? Altered Carbon, the TV show. And I don't necessarily believe that that's the case, but life expectancy is obviously, as soon as you can give a shit about how you're going to move, and when you're older, you should give a shit about how you're going to move when you're older. Do you know what I mean? And yeah,
and that's why I use the word immortal, not immortal. Immortal is you can't be killed. Immortal is that you'll live forever, right?
Yeah.
And I think what was really true there is when you have a moment, and it doesn't matter when you begin. Research just came out. If you train for a marathon, you look 4 years younger in your vascular system, right? Like your body. At no point do you stop responding to exercise and nutrition and sleep. Your body is a wonderful healing machine, and it will put up with our stuff for a long time until it won't. And the cues are there. Zamparelli was the American who got shot down, lived in the raft in that movie Unbreakable, and then captured by the Japanese in the internment camp. He had just run a 404 mile, and then was our Olympian. Then goes to World War II. He's starved and tortured and fractures his ankle, and he comes back and he runs like a 405 mile. So he's, after all of that, he's within a second of his all-time PR, and it might have been 402, 403. My point is, that's how resilient humans are. And sometimes I think we put conditions on ourselves that limit how robust and tolerant we are. And we make ourselves less robust, and then we got a second. Hopefully we can get some more of the things right early. And some people, it's about putting food on the table and getting to work. Good. So what can we control? Let's get you sleeping a half hour. Get in bed half hour earlier for those people. That's my homework for them. One of my good mates, John Berardi, he is a nutrition genius, and he'll say, when people are really, really overweight and struggling, he's like, get a dog. And the first thing that happens is that person has to walk the dog, and they've already changed their behavior. And he's like, and this week, I need you to drink 1 glass of water a day. And so he gets them to drink 1 glass of water and walk the dog. And they were like, I lost 30 pounds. I understand. He's like, yep, that's how it goes. So, it's like we've thrown a blanket on human beings. And if we just take that blanket off, we'll rebound. It's like that plant you had in college that you barely watered, you didn't take care of, and you finally took it home and it just blossomed. That's it.
Perfect place to sort of wrap things up there, Kelly. Great ending statement, one might argue. For anybody that does live under a rock, where is the best place to stay in touch with the wizard that is Kelly Starrett from now on?
We are the Ready State, and on the socials, if you want to see how we think and how we apply this to life and training, you can see us deliver small sermons every day on the Ready State. And
I stay up to date with them all the time.
It's good, and it's a way of us, practicing. And then one of the things that I think is that sometimes people didn't realize what's possible, that they can care for their own bodies. And if you go to thereadystate.com, we have a 2-week free trial. More importantly, we have a 2-week onboarding program. So if you're like, hey, I want to know more about my body, I want to know more how to take care of myself with and without equipment, we'll train you up for 2 weeks as an onboarding on-ramp program, and then you can cancel after 2 weeks or stick around forever, right? So I think that's the key, is that what we're really trying to do is change the future, and that's how it goes,
Amazing. So yeah, I've been excited to do this since we got it organized at the back end of last year. Every little moment kind of thinking, oh, I really hope it comes through, and nothing happens and nothing crops up, and it's been every ounce of what I would have expected. So thank you again so much for taking the time out to do this. But at this moment in time, the Wellness Academy podcast is not being listened to by millions of people, and yet you still gave me the time. I thank you.
Well, if you hadn't put out so hard in the workout, it would have been a different conversation. But you came in, and you put your nickel in, which is show up and be enthusiastic, which is really nine-tenths of it. And don't worry, just remind people, you don't have to be perfect. Just get started, do something, and then tomorrow we'll do a little bit better. And in 10 years, I'll finish by just saying that one of my friends is a kid named Matt Vincent. Is a world champion Highland Games athlete. And someone said, hey, how do you get strong? He's like, just do something heavy once a week for 10 years. Let me know how it goes. That's it. Just got to lift something heavy once a week for 10 years. I guarantee you're going to get stronger. And that's really the way we can look at it. I need gains now. I need 6 weeks to a bigger, no. Just get under some load, and that's really how it works.
He's a super cool guy, Matt. He was this close to coming on the podcast, but it didn't work at the time. So maybe after I've interviewed the big case star, he might change his mind. Who knows?
Well, hey, thank you so much, man. And we will see you again soon.
100%. Thanks, Kelly.